This podcast is brought to you with limited interruption by Rudy Luther Toyota. Whether looking for an exciting brand new Toyota, a certified pre-owned vehicle, or getting quality routine maintenance and service for your vehicle, Rudy Luther Toyota is the place to go. Rudy Luther Toyota, the southeast corner of 394 and 169 in Golden Valley. Subscribe to the podcast Beyond Politics. They host some of the biggest names and smartest minds. Beyond Politics is from a former Democratic congressman who helped ignite Barack Obama's campaign and a former campaign manager and political columnist. They go beyond the usual chatter on politics, news, science, and books. It's politics and everything beyond. On Beyond Politics, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Broadcasting live on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota, and in the evenings on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. It is the Matt McNeil Show for your Thursday. Matt and Patrick here today. Also joining us to begin the show, our good friend Cliff Schecter, as he is kind enough to join us today to talk about the issues. Of course, if you're not going to his YouTube page, you're wrong, mainly because he just put a nice video up of mine. That just went up there.
Of course.
Thank you, Cliff.
I mean, could any good channel really exist without Matt McNeil up there? Come on.
Hey, by the way, I got a nice compliment for you. Last week, I was out at an event called Drinking Liberally. I had a guy come up and said, saw you when you were in town for Sexy Liberal here in Minneapolis. And he says that we got to bring you back. And it's just you and I talking politics on a stage, and that was his idea. And I thought maybe you and I could do this in Chicago. We could do that here. I think that maybe we should try to figure something like that out.
I'd love to do it. Absolutely. I mean, I think you're going to have to do the selling of the tickets, though. I may have like 3 people who buy them because of me. But as long as your vast popularity in the Minneapolis area can do it, or Chicago, I think that might work. I mean, I'm having fun, obviously, but I mean, I'd love to come talk politics to you anytime.
Well, so, and I will. I've heard so many people talk about how great it was to see you here in town a few weeks back. And so, no, I think that wouldn't be a big deal. I got a fold-out couch. You'll have to sleep on that. Is that going to be okay?
Yeah, I mean, I've met your family. They seem pretty nice. So, that's cool. That's cool. Pets, good. I mean, I'm not Christy Noem. You don't have to worry about me. We're not going for a walk to the gravel pit. I think everything would work out fine. No, seriously. And I should say it was very kind of people to say nice things. It was great meeting people. I really enjoyed the grope and
meet and grope. Yeah, that's what we did with Stephanie Miller there. Yeah, no, it was.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, and getting the Matt McNeil folks. You should pay for the Matt McNeil tour of Minneapolis, because I'm going to tell you. Oh, and St. Paul. Yes. You get both, because he knows stuff that like nobody else knows. I swear, I learned so much stuff from him, and I went a walk across that cool bridge that I can't remember the name of anymore. They shut down.
Stone Arch Bridge. Yeah.
I told my father-in-law, who used to be in the lumber business, about Skid Row and see, I remember my lessons and how they use the water power there to move the lumber down the river, I believe. And who knows? I learned a thing or two. I am now smarter because of Matt McNeil.
It's a healthy tour when I take you to every place I've been busted. So, it's always good fun on that.
It shows most of his old drug haunts and, back when he was a pimp, but everything else was clean. I was trying to get through college. I was desperate. Okay. Let's talk about Samuel Alito's little minx of a wife who apparently has put up a second flag. This, I guess, is it his Long Island summer vacation home. He put up another January 6th separatist flag, this one tied to the far-right evangelicals. And once again, when we found the first flag, that he put the American flag upside down at his house, his whole argument was, it was my wife, it was up for a few weeks, I had nothing to do with it. Now he's gone silent as it's become apparent that, no, he's actually on the side of the January 6th insurrectionists. Right. So is he like trying to become an amusement park, like Six Flags? Is that what's going on here?
Worst amusement park ever.
Exactly. It'd be like, hi, this is the theme park you come to watch an insurrectionist bore you literally to death, talking about theories of controlling women's rights from 15th century guys who believe in marital rape. Yeah, that's what would be. It's the best amusement park you can imagine. First of all, when you think about the fact that idiot, and I'm glad I can't think of his name right now, kicker from Kansas City from the Chiefs.
Butker. Butker.
Well, I should be able to think of that, right? Yeah, Butker, right? Yeah. My wife, I think she's found the most meaningful, the most meaningful part of her life has been in serving me and being a mom, being a wife. Hey, she's the one who put up the flag, though. It was her. I have no agency. I mean, that's the right for you, right? Like, the wife is servile and does nothing but pump out babies and say, yes, sir, no, sir. Can I help you, sir? Except for when it comes to all the bad stuff the men do, then it was the wife's fault. Just blame her. So the fact that that's part of it just shows how full of crap they all are. But and you add in the fact that he lied about his wife. Like, we've been gradually finding out that he is just as much of a tool, just as intellectually out of his depth, just as much of a liar and a cretin and corrupt as Clarence Thomas. And I feel like this was that final act where he's no better than Clarence Thomas, the two of them. In every single way, you could not be qualified to be in a Supreme Court or not qualified to be in a Supreme Court. It kind of makes you wish, remember Harriet Miers? Kind of makes you wish we had let them put her on the court.
No.
Because clearly she was more qualified than Alito, who only got on there because we blocked her.
One of the things that's interesting about this, because today we had this Supreme Court ruling that basically said the South Carolina election maps can stand even though they clearly are designed to lessen the impact of African American voters. The six Republican justices went along with this. Is part of the agenda here that you have Alito and Thomas as the extremist far right of the Supreme Court to basically make it look like the other four, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Amy, and Roberts, make it seem like we're the voice of reason as we uphold this, racist election map. I mean, is that kind of the whole game here?
Well, was it a 7-2 decision? I'm sorry. Oh, no, it was a 6-3 decision in favor of them, right?
I believe so, yeah.
I think he wrote the opinion. Alito wrote the opinion. And from my understanding, reading legal analysts did it in such a way as to try to invalidate other attempts to make these cases based on race, because that's the kind of scumbag he is. But I've always felt like it's a 3-tiered right-wing Supreme Court. Gorsuch usually joins these two nuts.
Yeah.
I've usually felt like you've got, I'm being serious here, like as much as I think you have 3 outright fascists on the court, just fascists, right? Franco-type fascists. I'm not saying they're Hitler or whatever, though who knows, but they're at the very least, they're your garden variety fascists. Then you've got 2 of what I would call ultra-right authoritarians, and that would be Kavanaugh and Coney Barrett, who break with the 3 biggest nuts some of the time. Not most of it. And then you've got Roberts, who's just a traditional, very conservative, right? Who's not a fascist, but gives in enough to kiss their butts, and is scared to take them on. So I think he just is, he's to the left of them. He's only very right wing. And that's what you've got, so I do. I think those 3, the 2 you mentioned, you throw in Gorsuch, they often make the other 3. They make a religious nut and a blackout drunk who harassed women both look more moderate somehow in comparison. It's amazing.
Well, and Gorsuch is an odd duck because he does seem to get it right on Native American issues. He understands treaties supersede the Constitution, but that's the only thing that comes with any kind of level of common sense with that dude. It feels as if...
That's what tells me that there's somebody Native American in his family, because if I've learned anything about people that right wing is if it doesn't impact them, they don't care. Yeah. So somewhere along the line, it makes me suspect there's somebody Native American, so he actually cares about that, whereas he doesn't care about other people.
This whole concept of a Supreme Court whose goal is to push an anti-American, anti-Constitution agenda that is clearly designed for a fascist regime. It is terrifying, and the fact that they're so blatant about it, that Clarence Thomas has taken his RVs without even batting an eye as he hangs out with the Hitler fan, and Alito is out there flying flags he's gotten autographed from, it seems like he's gotten autographed
when he's not flying to Rome for free.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Well, those 5-star, those trips are delightful. I'd sell out my soul for those. But
of course. And remember, the only reason he did it is because there was an empty seat on the plane.
Yes.
Otherwise, he wouldn't have done
it. And he sure as heck wasn't going to give it to his wife. I mean, she needs to stay home and, keep the house clean.
She needs to stay home and put up all the flags.
Exactly.
I mean, she's busy. She's busy flying flags of sedition and insurrection and against the Constitution of the United States of America. I mean, come on.
Does Alito have a European place, and what flag is flying outside of that one? Yeah.
I can draw it for you if you like. I mean, look, there's two things that need to happen, right? The one big one we all know, we talk about all the time. We need to absolutely destroy them in November, as we've been doing. Forget the polls. We've been doing this in every special election. In the midterms we did, where we've been winning 10, 20 points above what the polls say we're going to do. Just happened again in Maryland, where even in a Democratic primary, where the African-American woman they had her behind the rich white guy by anywhere from 1 to 6 points, and she won by 8.
Yes.
Gee, I wonder which groups they were undercounting in their polling. So you see this again and again. I have a lot of confidence. If everybody turns out, we are going to win all the states we won, and we will win North Carolina. I think we'll win Florida, and I think we have a shot at Texas and Ohio even, because they're doing Dobbs and in vitro fertilization, and you see it, happening again. They're still making these arguments. They're going after birth control right now in Louisiana.
Yeah,
they're not going to stop. This is their agenda. They want to. Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee said that Griswold versus Connecticut was badly argued. That was the case, folks, that gave everybody a right to birth control. So maybe in a year from now, she can go to Dayton, Tennessee, celebrate the 100th year anniversary of the Scopes monkey trial, and declare evolution illegal to teach too. I don't know, just for a fun getaway for her. But I mean, this is who they are. So first, we have to crush them. Yes. Ted Cruz, Rick Scott, any vulnerable seat. We need to have a bigger Senate majority. We need to take the House back. Biden needs to win big, and then it's on. Part two is we need to take on the Supreme Court. And when I say it's on, I don't mean violence or anything of that sort. We need to have enough folks so we can get rid of the filibuster, and we need to change this stuff is not in the Constitution. How many justices should be on the court? We have not added to the court since something like 1837, 8, I want to say. And this country's grown by, I think, but since that time, 10-fold, 11-fold, something like that. So we can't even, it's beyond even politics. They can't even take most of the cases that we need decided for law so that we can be a modern society. That court needs to have 4 members added to it immediately, and I think it needs to honestly have 8 more members in a sort of staggered way over the next 10 years, decade, 12 years, that kind of thing. That would depoliticize it too, because only some members would be on each case. And then obviously, I mean, these two need to be absolutely investigated. And when we get to all of that, maybe we can have some legitimacy to our state, to our country's highest court again. But there's literally no legitimacy here. They are corrupt. They are dishonest. They're despicable. They're cruel. There's just nothing about any of their decisions that should make anybody. We follow them because of the law, although at some point they take that too far. We'll see when people are not willing to take it anymore. Yeah. But and again, I'm not pushing for violence, but I mean, at some point when there was slavery, people said we must do something about it. Or Jim Crow, or things that, what we did to Native Americans that are just so beyond the pale. Let's resolve it peacefully, kick their butts in November, and then change the court.
And that's how we have to do it. Yeah, investigate Alito immediately. Let's take a break, come back. Cliff Schecter joins us. It's the Matt McNeil Show. It's the Matt McNeil Show on your Thursday. Cliff Schecter kind enough to join us today. Once again, Cliff's Edge is the YouTube page. I'll make sure I link to all that a little bit later on. Cliff, I got to introduce most of the listeners, especially everyone in Chicago, to a guy named Royce White. I saw Royce White play basketball at high school because I'm in that school district he played in. He was a guy that always was a little off, though. He played college basketball. I think eventually ended up at Iowa State. He had some issues. He couldn't fly. He has a fear of flying, so that kind of ended his career. And then he ended up doing mixed martial arts, but somehow he got involved in politics. Now, Amy Klobuchar, the U.S. Senator, is up for re-election this year. She's going to win, hands down. I mean, it really is. She's liked even in a lot of the red areas of the state, so she's going to win handily. That being said, the Republicans still have to run somebody. They had this one business guy who didn't seem very interested, but for some reason, and we talked about this on Monday on my show, the Republican Party of Minnesota moved forward the Senate endorsement, and Royce White, who has $10,000 worth of campaign funds, $5,000 worth of debt, has really no one even knew he was running for Senate, wins the Republican endorsement in Minnesota to run against Amy Klobuchar. And that's when they decided maybe we should take a look at this guy's social media, because this guy is a clown car of insanity. He is nuts.
Yes. Well, speaking for the Jewish lobby,
yes,
which I know he has a serious problem with.
Yes.
He's a virulent anti-Semite. He came up with COVID conspiracy theories, and I shared numerous others. It's a shame, I think, as you said, because, well, it's worse than a shame. It's detrimental and harmful and will hurt people. It's a shame in that he seems to have certain kinds of mental illness, and this is what the Republicans prey upon, right? This is what MAGA preys upon. It draws in people that are insecure and angry, resentful. They always don't know what it is about, because initially, from what I read, he was out there protesting what happened to George Floyd. And somehow it didn't matter. They saw this guy as somebody. Steve Bannon recruited him, which should tell you everything you need to know. Yeah. Bannon looks around. Bannon is evil, and I can go on. He hasn't showered for months. And he smells like old socks that have been dumped in a dumpster with a big pile of meth on top of them. I could go on, but I'll just stop it there and get to what I want to say, which is he is this evil guy who looks around for the type of person, and in your state, this guy has a little bit of fame for exactly the reason you said, because he was a famous high school basketball player. He played in college. I think he didn't even go pro for a little bit. I don't think he played for very long because of what you're saying, and ended up sort of flaming out. But the point being, it's a reminder of like a Herschel Walker type situation, right? And it's also a reminder of that because they're always looking for tokens too. Where can we find somebody Jewish? Where can we find somebody black? Where can we find somebody Latino? Where can we find somebody gay to pretend? Because if they put window dressing on all of it, to all the folks who are willing to sell out their own communities, and they can pretend that they really aren't the white nationalists that they are. Yeah. White Christian nationalists is what I should say. And so he fills all of those functions, right? He's got that little bit of fame. They love fake celebrities, Instagram influencers and former, half-assed athletes. Sorry if I wasn't supposed to say that on here.
Oh, no, he's half-assed, yes.
Okay, I didn't know if I could say the ass word, but apparently I can. And also, people that kind of, your Chachis, I'm sure he'll run eventually for something. Kind of actors that never, this is kind of the group of, to steal a phrase, deplorables, who they bring together. They bring together people that have failed at all of these various pursuits, but maybe built a little bit of fame along the way, and will sell out their mother for, George Santos was that kind of a guy. What's her name? Paula Maria Luna, whatever. She's changed her name because she's a fraud, just like she changed the story about her dad, the story about her family, and all of that. So I don't even actually know what her real name is, but she changed it to the half of her family is Latina, and it turns out that she was an Instagram influencer. Great, let's get her out there. This is what they do. Substance means nothing because they don't have any substance. They don't have any policies. Their policy is all based on human emotion, resent, hate, that kind of thing.
Well, and it should be noted, not only is he anti-Semite, he's an insane misogynist. He is multiple times, repeatedly used the C word for women on social media. He seems to be anti-homophobic, or he's anti-LGBTQ as well. But, it's interesting because it is, as you said, it's two things. One, he seems to punch that ticket for a lot of the really kind of super white, far-right Republicans that they think, oh, we'll just get a minority and then everybody will vote for that person. And they don't even understand that. But your point about Bannon, I talked to a Republican guy earlier this week, and he said his theory is they know they're not going to win that seat, so they would rather run somebody who has no chance but really pushes all those MAGA buttons, and they think that that's a winning strategy.
Yeah, I mean, and that makes complete sense too. Again, they don't want anybody who is at all a sane kind of Republican, even a terrible right winger. I mean, a guy who's dangerous because it could stop us from holding the Senate is someone like Larry Hogan in Maryland. He's a sane conservative Republican. So McConnell wanted him because McConnell wants to take the Senate. Donald Trump, I mean, I'm interested to see what Trump and the other folks do because he's exactly what the type of person like Bannon does not want. Bannon would rather lose a race than win with a Larry Hogan type guy because he wants people out there. And that's where I was saying this guy is dangerous. He will be out there spreading anti-Semitism, spreading his anti-LGBTQ message. He will get people harmed. He will inspire people to commit acts of violence. He'll do because that's what conspiracies about various groups of people, when you dehumanize them, do. And this is what Steve Bannon wants. So you're exactly right. And Steve Bannon also thinks probably that they have a shot at Minnesota and is hoping that this guy, I know.
Sure.
You kind of have to enjoy it, don't you? Yeah. And he thinks this guy will turn out every last lunatic from underneath whatever rocks they crawl out from under will come out and vote if he's out there.
Yes, the South Loop in Chicago is going to go red too. Sure it is. Sure. No,
I wish. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it just is crazy. And this is something, even though this is a Minnesota story, this is something you're seeing nationwide. And it is going to be interesting. Maryland does run a little bit more on the left there, and I like Maryland a lot. Hogan is an old school Republican. It will be interesting to see if that state allows them to usurp him.
But he did also block increasing abortion rights while he was governor. He is still a conservative, and so he may not be as dangerous as the MAGA types. But if he empowers them, if he supports McConnell, who's just a puppet at this point, the real power in that power, among the Senate there, it comes from the folks like Ted Cruz and Hawley and people like that. Hopefully, all of whom will lose this time, but whoever doesn't, it comes from that Rand Paul. I mean, that's where the power is. It's with the far right Russians, right? The ones that are really serving the Kremlin and are conspiracy theorists and nuts. So I mean, and racists, of course. So I mean, that's the thing is you can't have Hogan win because he's just in the end. I don't care what he believes. Just like I don't care if Susan Collins is really just conservative or Murkowski is really just conservative. If they're willing to caucus with Republicans, they're empowering the worst elements in our society. Yeah, and they're harming the rest of us.
And I was only referring to whether they come out of the Republican primary because I think that Democrat's going to win out there for sure. Cliff, once again, Cliff's Edge, of course, the latest video featuring me, that's up there. Cliff, have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend, my friend.
You too. Thanks for having me on, man.
My pleasure. Cliff Schecter, let's take a break. We'll come back. It's the Matt McNeil Show. Broadcasting in the evenings on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk, and in the afternoons on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota. It's the Matt McNeil Show for your Thursday. Just a little bit of housekeeping for you. We are off tomorrow and on Monday for your Memorial Day. I hope you do have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Tomorrow, we've got a best of show. Bill Corbett from Riff Tracks and MST3K joins us tomorrow. We'll re-air that show. And then on Monday for Memorial Day, it's the show where we talked about Kristi Noem shooting the puppy dog at the gravel pit. So, enjoy. Make sure you get back with us live here on Tuesday of next week. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. By the way, I just want to make sure I point this out. Royce White, there's breaking news. Apparently, Michael Broadcorp, who's the conservative for the folks in Chicago, he's a conservative pundit that I talk to sometimes, and he's before you say it's like, why would you do? He's like an old school Republican, so I can actually relate to him, and we have decent conversations. He's reporting that Royce White, his wife back in 2014, had an order of protection against him, and he's opposed to the petitions. I'll have to post that a little bit later on. This is coming your way, especially when you look at races where there's really no chance at all for the Republican to win it. And once again, Royce White is running against Amy Klobuchar. Klobuchar is going to win. I mean, she really is actually pretty popular, even in Republican areas. But if you are, I remember 10, 15 years ago, I live in a fairly liberal area. So the Republicans, sometimes they run a candidate, sometimes they don't. Doesn't mean there aren't Republican candidates on the ticket, but the Republicans are generally that you're running. They're changing that because they want to put forward that this is the modern Republican Party. Cliff talked today, and they talked about that Louisiana just passed legislation making it illegal to have certain abortion medications, and that they're now illegal in Louisiana. Now, mind you, they're not going to be illegal for all the Republicans and their wives and their mistresses. No, they won't. Their rights will be maintained. They'll be illegal for everybody else, because that's the system. You think that all of a sudden Republicans are going to start pumping out 12, 15 kids? Of course not. Of course not. And funny, once again, the illegal thing is the medications for women. Yeah. It is the war on women. It's this extremist far-right mentality. And you're going to see this more and more and more. Watch out, especially in suburban Chicago districts where it's a slam dunk for the Democrats. Watch for who the Republicans are running, because it's this extremism which is freaking terrifying. I mean, Royce White could literally be the worst candidate I've ever seen. That clearly the people that moved forward the Senate nomination process at the convention last weekend for the Republican Party had not looked at his social media pages. Because as Cliff said, yeah, it's anti-Semitic, misogynistic, homophobic. You know, it's just, yeah. Conspiracy theories. Steve Bannon's there. This is where things are going. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. What's not helping is the erosion of the news, particularly in rural America. Now, this is actually a report from Northwestern University from late last year, and I just read this, and it's just fascinating to watch how the news in this country has been gutted by conservatives. It's not even the flawed system that existed 20 years ago, where, and you know, for example, you used to have small town communities, rural America, town of maybe 7,000 or 8,000 people. They'd have 2 or 3 radio stations. They'd have definitely a local newspaper. There might even be a local television station that might even have a local news broadcast. And maybe those went away probably more in the mid-'90s, but that's what you used to have. And you used to not have just such bias and far-right leaning news. But this was the whole plan. I mean, it's a long game. And trust me, one of the things that's just terrifying about Republicans is their long games are fairly well thought out, and they actually achieve them. And that's terrifying. They got rid of the fairness doctrine in the 1980s, saying it was crippling quality. It wasn't crippling quality. Immediately what happened is you sacrificed quality for ideology. Then they got the Telecommunications Act of 1996, signed by Bill Clinton, indeed, but basically written by Republicans to ease up the ownership rules. So by the time you get to 2000, and at that point they were trying to kill off public television and public radio because they could, why are we subsidizing this? They should be on the free market. And the reason why they wanted to get rid of them was because in many communities at that point, that was the only news that wasn't filtered through a right-wing screed, was the top of the hour news on the classical music station in town that basically NPR was putting out. And it infuriated them. Back in 2000, you had, most communities at that point had already been subjugated into this right-wing media-only world. The local newspapers had been taken over by these large media groups that specialized in small-town newspapers and basically were printing out far right-wing politics. I mean, you should if you've never read a rural Republican newspaper, holy God, you'd be like, what planet is this reporting from? All carrying, the same guy from D.C. that's just some far-right tool. The local radio stations all got bought up, and they were easy to buy out and control. They basically, all of a sudden, all the business owners who, hey, I tell you what, we like subjecting the locals to what we want to do, so if you want advertising from us, well, you better echo what we want to hear. Oh, and the local small-town radio handed themselves over, and in the cases they didn't, those radio stations were run out of town. You used to have so many more radio stations, so many more newspapers in small-town America. They all got, if they weren't willing to pay and play the game, they weren't going to get paid money for advertisement, and they shut them down. They basically, by 2000, had created this news vacuum where Fox News was considered moderate in rural America. Now it's getting worse because now they don't even want any kind of variance at all in the message. Now, and listen to this Northwestern study because this is fascinating. Residents in more than half of U.S. countries have no or very limited access to reliable local news source, either print, digital, or broadcast. There are 204 counties in this country without any local news outlet and 1,562 counties served with only one remaining local news source, invariably a weekly newspaper. For the first time, this year's report places 228 of those single news source counties on the watch list, a high risk of losing its last remaining local news outlet. Most of these watch list countries are located in the higher poverty areas of the South and the Midwest. Many serve communities with significant Black, Hispanic, or Native American populations. Newspapers are continuing to vanish at an average rate of more than 2 a week. This was once again back in November. Since 2005, the country has lost almost 2,900 newspapers, including more than 130 confirmed closings or mergers over the last year. But all but about 100 were weeklies, which are often the sole provider of any local news in the small and mid-sized communities. There are currently only 6,000 newspapers in the country, approximately 1,200 dailies, and 4,790 weeklies. That's insane. It used to be, and if you think about way back when they you'd get a newspaper every day, and it was thick. It was, 100 pages of news on some days, where it was thick. Now, and there was 3 newspapers that served every major city. Not anymore. In addition of losing almost a third of its newspapers, the country has lost almost 2/3 of its newspaper journalists, 4,300 since 2005. Most of these journalists were employed in large metro and regional daily newspapers, half of which are owned by the nation's 10 largest chains. Today, many of those large dailies own the chains employed less than a fifth of the journalists that are out there. The footprint for alternative local news outlets, approximately 550 digital-only sites, 720 ethnic media organizations, and 212 public broadcasting stations, remains very small and centered around metro areas. Each of these alternative news sources faces unique business challenges that constrain their growth. Many digital startups have trouble gaining enough subscriber and funding to achieve long-term sustainability. Since 2018, the number of new local news digital startups is established annually has roughly equaled the number that go dark. Most ethnic and minority-owned media has suffered from the same dramatic decline in advertising revenue as mainstream newspapers. As a result, more than 150 long-standing ethnic news operations closed during the pandemic. The public broadcasting outlets, especially local national public radio news outlets, are underfunded, receiving only a small percentage of the public funds allocated to the Corporation of Public Broadcasting. As a result, many metro areas have not been able to replace the missing newspapers with digital or broadcast alternatives, and most suburban and rural communities that lose a local newspaper do not get a replacement. I remember the local news in the specific part of the suburbs that you used to live in. Remember that? Yeah, I'm up here with the Sun Sailors. They're mostly gone now. I will say this. I mean, Heartland Signal down in Chicago. They're doing God's work down there. If you can, support them. I mean, they are doing God's work. Up here in the Twin Cities, Minnesota Reformer is fantastic. Sahan Journal is fantastic. Racket is fantastic. And yeah, they are desperately needing money to keep afloat. So they need their subscribers, and they need the people that are helping them out. So, whether it's Heartland Signal or Minnesota Reformer, you need to be out there making a donation to keep these guys afloat, because in many places, they're the only other non-corporate news. I just ran into a situation where I hate saying it, but there's a local journalist I had to point out. Did you ask the Republican who gave you the news release about the hypocrisy that you quickly pointed out to the governor, the Democratic governor? Didn't hear anything back. It's a little disconcerting, to say the least, if I, the talking chimp at a radio station, can basically say, well, wouldn't that be the first question you'd ask whenever I get a press release from someone, if especially I knew right from the top that there's a level of hypocrisy there that is outrageous? Nope. Just going to run with that. At the time of industry-wide economic disruption, news organizations located in affluent or growing communities with diverse sources of for-profit and nonprofit funding are most likely to develop sustainable new business models. So that's one positive there, but it's a unique situation. Reversing the decline of local news will necessarily involve multiple stakeholders pursuing complementary programs. I don't know what you can do about this. Already in most rural America, the local news is Twitter. It is. It's Twitter, or it's Facebook, or it's Nasty Next Door. Nasty Next Door is one of the best nicknames. Nasty Next Door. Sometimes it might be the local website for your local city, especially if there's any problem with that. You know, if your kids have a snow day in rural America, you know, it's sometimes difficult. You're basically, it used to be you just turn on your local radio station. They'd have everything there. Now there isn't a local radio station. Even if you do happen to have a radio station that's local, more than likely it's all 24 hours, just satellite radio. Things have changed, man. And once again, this is Republican long game. They didn't want to have counterpoint to their talking points available to the masses in rural America. And so what did they do? They shut down the news almost completely. And it's worked. And sure, there have been a few radio groups and newspaper groups that have suffered, but the reality is, you know, nothing's coming to save them. If you can, support your local news outlet. I'll give you another one, Blue Stem Prairie, that covers a lot of Minnesota, rural Minnesota and rural South Dakota stuff. They're out there. You got to find them, and you need to support them, because if they go away, it really is going to be one of those situations where there isn't going to be any alternative to the right-wing talking points they force down your throat. And that's some scary stuff. Let's take a break. Come back. It's the Matt McNeil Show. It is the Matt McNeil Show on your Thursday. Once again, we are off on Friday. We're off on Monday. Have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. As a U.S. Army veteran, make sure you take some time to thank those who gave their lives for this country, and the bravery that was out there. I do appreciate all the people who do serve, who have served, the people who served at home while loved ones were overseas, all of it. So, you know, not only take some time to remember the people in your life, but remember all the people that did serve. I salute you, veterans. As a U.S. Army, love you guys. 952 and women and women who kick ass. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. So we talked recently about how Red Lobster basically got killed off by people just eating the restaurant to death. Their endless shrimp thing killed them. It literally did. One guy was a report. The guy had 30 plates of shrimp over a 5-hour period. I'm sorry. How do you not put some sort of limit on it? Like, you cannot be here for more than 2 hours, and after 2 hours you have to leave for the day. You can't do anymore. I understand that's like, so well, you can't call it endless shrimp at that point. It seems to me Red Lobster got killed just because they loved the words endless shrimp.
You could have just called it Shrimp Feast. Say, hey, you get as many plates as you want for 2 hours, but you can't order more than one plate at a time, and you can't get to-go bags, and that's that. You could easily done that. They didn't, and their customers literally ate Red Lobster to death, or in the process of death. Ticketmaster, or Live Nation, as they like to call themselves because they're cool, man. They got their little goatee beard, man. And I'm no longer like that, man. I'm someone cool and new. I'm Live Nation. Live Nation got killed by Taylor Swift. They just got too greedy. And it was, it was only a matter of time before this happened. Now, once again, there is a lot of questions on how much the artists themselves know about this. It seems that, especially with the largest artists on that go on sale, they're aware that Ticketmaster is funneling these tickets into the secondary market for a huge markup, and they get part of the cut and all these things. The problem is when, for every damn show you had, 20 million people were trying to get tickets, and you were in turn really only selling 30,000, not the 60,000 or 70,000 or 80,000 or 100,000 the stadium held, that you're holding back all these other tickets. Well, that's where it all came crashing down. Yes, Taylor Swift was the biggest concert event we've had in decades in this country, but it also exposed Live Nation for the fraud and bad business practices it is. And they can sit there and say, you can go to Baton Rouge and catch some act from the 90s for $20. But if that's where you're at, you're not offering us any value. And the reality is, the last major tours I was consistently going to was Rush when they were on tour. I love Rush. And I saw all their concerts. And so I would go see them, and I noticed that the ticket prices and all that stuff were just, the fees and all this stuff were skyrocketing and skyrocketing. It's nuts. It's nuts. The Justice Department on Thursday sued Live Nation Entertainment, the concert giant that owns Ticketmaster, asking the court to break up the company over claims it illegally maintained a monopoly on the live entertainment industry. And they do. They control the venues. They control the ticket sales. They control who plays where. It is absolutely a monopoly. In the lawsuit, which is joined by 29 states and the District of Columbia, the government accuses Live Nation of leveraging its sprawling empire to dominate the industry by locking venues into exclusive ticketing contracts, pressuring artists to use its services and threatening its rivals with financial retribution. Those tactics, the government argues, have resulted in higher ticket prices for consumers and have stifled innovation and competition throughout the industry. Hey, but you can go to Topeka and go see Third Eye Blind. Yeah, the suit asked the U.S. District Court of the Southern District of New York to order the divestiture of minimum Ticketmaster and prevent Live Nation from engaging in anti-competitive practices. It's time for fans and artists to stop paying the price of Live Nation's monopoly, said Merrick Garland, the Attorney General. On Thursday, it's time to break up Live Nation and Ticketmaster. The American people are ready for it. The suit is part of a broader push by American regulators to rein in corporate might on the internet age, testing century-old antitrust laws against big companies' power over consumers. The Justice Department has sued Apple and brought 2 cases against Google, while the Federal Trade Commission has brought antitrust suits against Amazon and Meta. The Justice Department's latest lawsuit is a direct challenge to the business of Live Nation and colossus in the entertainment industry and a force in the lives of musicians and fans alike. The case, filed 14 years after the government approved Live Nation's merger with Ticketmaster, has the potential of transforming the multi-billion-dollar concert industry. It's not going to be like AT&T when they busted up Ma Bell, because what they did there is they just created a bunch of regional telephone networks. The only way you can break this up and have any success with it is you have to have it to where in Chicago there are multiple different versions of Live Nation that operate in different facilities. In Minneapolis, St. Paul, there are multiple different versions. If you just shut down Chicago and say, well, Live Nation will be Live Nation Chicago, and it'll be Live Nation Twin Cities in Minneapolis, St. Paul, well, all you're doing is basically allowing the monopoly to exist only on a smaller scale. You have to break it up, and you have to have competition in these towns.
Lawmakers, fans, and competitors have accused the company of engaging in practices that harm rivals and drive up ticket prices and fees. Congressional hearings last year prompted a Taylor Swift tour pre-sale on Ticketmaster that left millions of people unable to buy tickets. Senators from both parties called on Live Nation a monopoly. In a result of the suit, Live Nation denied it was a monopoly, said that breaking it up will not result in ticket prices or lower ticket prices or fees. According to the company, artists and sports teams are primarily responsible for setting ticket prices. No, but your practices, it's the fees, it's the shutting down, you already have a system in place. No, Live Nation, Taylor Swift is going to be what undoes Live Nation. And I don't know what's going to happen, but if you do this right, it will be better for everyone. But just don't create regional monopolies. You have to break them apart nationwide. Chicago, have a wonderful weekend. We'll talk to you again on Tuesday. Minneapolis, St. Paul, Hour 2 up next. Hour number 2 of the show here on your Thursday. Matt Patrick here. Patrick, we once again, we talked about this with Dr. Joe yesterday. There are a lot of people that thought we were just going to win. I guess we were going to win the series with Dallas in 4 games and it was going to be over. I said this with Dr. Joe. You're a fool if you don't think that every one of these games is going to be just an absolute dogfight from here on out. That the last 4 teams remaining they're not a fluke. They had to get through 2 rounds. They did. And it's going to be a dogfight in every one of these games. Yesterday, here's what I'll say. You missed 9 free throws. 9. You lost by 3. That's it right there. And you can criticize. We can definitely criticize that overturned slam by Cat, which, okay, once again, and I said this earlier today, Patrick, and your thoughts on this. First of all, when they overturned that, did you see what he had done that caused them to say, no, that was an offensive foul?
No, I think they just missed it.
I've looked at it. Someone said, well, he was a little too over the basket. I'm like, okay, are we talking millimeters here? What are we talking about? I said this. I'll say this again. I don't mind if you're calling things ticky-tack, but you're doing that from the beginning of the game. That's fine. It's the same sense if I'm watching a baseball game and the umpire behind the plate has a strike zone the size of a postage stamp. Fine. That's the game. And as long as it's consistent on both sides, I don't have a problem with that. As a matter of fact, sometimes it's fun to watch pitchers have to deal with that. But that's the deal. If you're going to call ticky-tack fouls, fine. Just do it consistently. For you to all of a sudden start calling a ticky-tack foul at that point, less than 2 minutes left in the game, where you literally took 2 points off the scoreboard and then awarded that was the game. And I know it's like, well, they could have stopped them. They could have missed a shot. No. If you were to do the statistics and the odds on that, my guess is going to be the team that they basically punished at that point would have lost that game probably 90 to 95% of the time. It was an overwhelming tipping of the scales. And once again, if you're calling ticky-tack fouls the entire game, you're calling ticky-tack fouls the entire game. They weren't. Just all of a sudden, when it mattered most, they called a ticky-tack foul, which basically crippled the chances of the T-Wolves from winning that game. So when the referees and the NBA sit there and say, we're going to fine somebody for putting dollar signs out towards the refs, well, when I see crap like that, the first thing I said is, well, a ref must have had money on that game. And that's just that. Now, once again, I'll be very clear. They missed 9 free throws. That was more than enough to make that game go the other way. No, it just, I'm sorry, the referee, don't do that. Don't do that. And multiple NBA analysis are like, what foul was there? You know, I think that in that situation, when the referee implants themselves firmly in the game, I mean, most of the time in sports, you know, if it's a first quarter or a second quarter foul or something like that, you can't say that really affected the outcome of the game.
But like, I'll go back to baseball again. You get your closer out there and he throws a bad pitch and all of a sudden it's a 2-run homer and you lose the game. Well, there's a direct, you can say a lot of things, but the main thing you can say is, well, because of the closer, you lost that game. That's it. Because the referee basically decided to insert themselves in the game, and I'm not saying that they're getting paid off. But don't get mad at people when they accuse you of doing it when you pull crap like that. You want to do that? Fine. That's the game. But then don't get upset as like, how dare you question our integrity? My guess is someone made some money last night. That'd be my guess. And once again, I'm not Dr. Joe. I'm not the biggest NBA fan. But it reminded me a lot. One of the reasons why I turned the NBA off for many years is back when the Lakers with Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe were the Lakers. It was one of the things that was really annoying was to watch like Shaquille O'Neal run 6 steps, plant his knee in some defender's chest who clearly was planted, and they called the foul on the other team. And they got to a point where it was so blatant that they were favoring the Lakers and, sometimes other teams that I stopped watching. I stopped watching because it was just so obnoxious. It clearly was fraudulent. Well, yeah, if you're going to start doing that, you're going to get grief. By the time we come back here, they play, Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, they play tomorrow night. And game 3 is in Dallas. Is it Dallas in the evening or in the afternoon on Sunday?
I believe all the games are in the evening.
Oh, is it now into the evening? Is it every other day now?
Yep, I think every other day. So, yeah, it'll be Friday, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday.
Oh, hopefully we're not talking about being eliminated when we come back on Tuesday night's game. Hopefully not. 952-946-6205. By the way, are you going to get Patrick? Are you going to get the grill out? It's Memorial Day weekend. Are you grilling this weekend?
I will be maybe looking for somebody who is grilling.
Man, I might have to give you a ring. I got chicken. I got burgers. I got hot dogs. I'm going to be doing not all at once. I mean, it's not like I'm going to Red Lobster.
You sound like the place that's got it going on this weekend.
Well, it's always going on there, man. That's me, man. I like Memorial Day weekend because it's just, first of all, it's generally really nice weather. I'm going to get out to the Arboretum this weekend. If you've not been out to the Arboretum, the flowers really start going crazy out there this weekend. It is magnificent. Get out there. The tulips might be done, but you get so many other flowers. It's incredible. Especially take that 3-mile tour. You're going to have a good time with that. I might go on out. I'm definitely going to hit some parks this weekend and go hiking. I want to get out. I did with Open Doors last weekend. I did a lot of metro-based stuff. I'm going to get back out into the parks a little bit and see a little bit of that. So hopefully that's going to go well. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to it. No matter what you're doing, I hope you're having a wonderful weekend. And once again, best of shows. Tomorrow, it's the Bill Corbett and the Children's Theater show that we did, 2 weeks ago. And it's still relevant today, so you can go catch that. That's going to be tomorrow. And on Monday for your Memorial Day, we talk about Kristi Noem basically shooting anything she wants to at the gravel pit. So 952-946-6205. It is something that I generally have done over the last few years, is at Memorial Day, talk a little bit about remembering and why you should remember, especially those who have served and fought for us, especially if you're a Minnesotan. And a lot of this goes back to the standard thing I have talked about when I would see some freaking idiot on Memorial Day or on Veterans Day or on the 4th of July flying a freaking Confederate flag. And I can't remember which town it was in southern Minnesota where the fire department was flying a Confederate flag on the 4th of July parade. Yeah. And I've talked about going up there and saying, you do understand that flag represents, because the modern Confederate flag wasn't necessarily the Confederate flag at the time, but it represents the Confederacy. And if you're in the state of Minnesota, you shouldn't be flying the Confederate flag. Because as we get ready to remember for Memorial Day, you should remember the first Minnesota.
and the incredible sacrifice that they made. And I will not ever get tired of talking about this, because there is bravery and then there is the 1st Minnesota. What they went through at Gettysburg was insane. And you can say definitively, if not for the 1st Minnesota, the Union would have lost the war. There was a moment in time where Minnesota stepped up and saved the Union. It's interesting. I was looking at the breakdown of the companies of the 1st Minnesota. Company A, because remember, this was a relatively new state. 1858, we became a state. So they called up the troops in basically 1860. Started calling up the troops. The first was the Pioneer Guard. And that's, if you go on up to the cathedral, there's a statue of a a Union soldier that's up there on that pedestal that's right there. That is supposedly representing the first person in Minnesota who signed up. I don't think it is actually. I mean, they didn't have stopwatches and convenient clocks, but there was a guy that did. That's the guy. That's the statue who's represented there. Company A was the Pioneer Guard out of St. Paul. Company B was the Stillwater Guard out of Stillwater. Company C was also out of St. Paul, the St. Paul Volunteers. Company D was out of a very small and young Minneapolis metro area, the Lincoln Guards. St. Anthony was the Company E. The Red Wing and Goodhue County Volunteers were Company F. Faribault Guards were Company G. The Dakota County Volunteers were Company H. The Wabasha Volunteers were Company I. Winona Volunteers were Company K. And from Rice and Steele counties, the Sharpshooters were Company L out of the Minnesota 1st. Times and places. You go around, a lot of the times you'd be marching down in columns and stuff, and something would be happening up there, and by the time you got up there, it wasn't happening. And so there are multiple cases where the 1st Minnesota, and many units, they were kind of near the sites of major battles, but they just never were part of it. They were there at First Bull Run. They fought in the first major battle of the Civil War, the first Battle of Bull Run. They were also at Antietam. They lost in Antietam, and if you have not gone to the Antietam battlefield, that is an amazing battlefield to go see. 1 officer killed, 3 officers wounded, 15 enlisted killed, 79 enlisted wounded. Antietam was a freaking mess. I mean, that was the casualty rates and the speed at the death at Antietam was insanity. 1st Minnesota Regiment fired with so much coolness and accuracy that they brought down 3 times one of the enemy's flags and finally cut the flagstaff in 2. Salute. Once again, the South were traitors to the country. Gettysburg. All right, we get to 1863. First day at Gettysburg. And once again, speaking of Memorial Day, if you're on a great trip, go to Gettysburg, get the audio tour. You don't need to have a tour guide. You can go follow it around yourself. They have laid this thing out perfectly. You start up on the northwest side of town where the Confederate forces that came in actually from the north that day came into south and faced the Union there. Started on the north side of town, if not for the fact that the Union reinforcements got there when they did, things would have gotten really ugly for the Union forces that were in Gettysburg. By the second day, you've set up lines down Seminary Ridge because there was a seminary. There was the Confederacy. Down Cemetery Ridge, because there was a cemetery, was the Union forces with Big and Little Round Top on the southern side of it and Culp's Hill on the north side. And they basically faced off across this large swath of land. It was chaos. There are many different battles we can talk about there. The second day of fighting at Gettysburg is when First Minnesota really came to its own. Major General Winfield Scott ordered the 1st Minnesota, composed of nearly 250 men, to charge into a brigade of 1,200 men belonging to James Longstreet's Corps and Richard Anderson's division, although the regiment was outnumbered by a ratio of at least 5 to 1. As a matter of fact, there's other stories I've read that was closer to 2,000, and one story I read that said it might have even been closer to 3,000 people that were charging towards them. charging was Hancock's only opportunity to buy time for the Union reinforcements to arrive. Now, and once again, the discrepancy there, sometimes I've noticed when it comes to historians, it depends on where these regiments were at. And I believe the Peach Orchard was behind the Confederate Army, and I've seen some people trying to label those people as part of this. They might not have been. So it was well over 1,000 troops versus 250. Well over 1,000, probably closer to 2,000. One survivor stated afterward that he expected the advance to result in death or wounds for us all. The regiment immediately obeyed the order, and Hancock was amazed. So what had happened is the Union general, was it Sickles? I think it was Sickles. He was an idiot. He basically overexposed himself. He went marching into the field, got cut off. They were getting gunned down, but what they had done unintentionally is created a hole in the Union line up on Cemetery Ridge. And there is a fantastic story of a Massachusetts infantry regiment that literally was pulling their cannons, running back towards the Union lines and firing straight, almost point blank into the Confederacy and we need to give them credit too, because they basically held it for just long enough to where all of a sudden, Major General Winfield Hancock goes over and said, "Who are you guys? We're the 1st Minnesota." Says, "This is all you got?" And he looked down at William Colville and said, attack that line. They didn't even hesitate. Grossly outnumbered. Didn't even hesitate. Bayonets leveled. Minnesota broke the first lines. The intensity of their charge disrupted the Southern forces' advances. Just before the 1st Minnesota became nearly encircled by enemy troops, Union reinforcements finally arrived in time to allow some of the men to make a fighting withdrawal. We're only talking minutes here. 262 men went into that fracas. 215 died. It is still, in the history of this country, the greatest loss of life by a single unit to actually have the unit still standing at the end of the day. 1st Minnesota did that. And by plugging that hole, that 6 minutes, they saved the Union that day. 1st Minnesota saved the Union that day. I was U.S. Army. The bravery of an individual running into something like that. It's amazing. And they saved the Union. Included in the losses were Colville himself and all but 3 of his captains. The 1st Minnesota flag lost 5 flag bearers, each man dropping his weapon to carry it and getting gunned down. The 47 survivors rallied back to General Hancock under the command of their senior surviving officer, Captain Nathan Messick. 82% casualty rate still stands as the largest loss by any surviving U.S. military unit in a single day's engagement. The Union colors are over at the rotunda at the Minnesota State Capitol. Confederate Brigadier General Cadmus Wilcox his report on this seriously implied that it was a much larger force that stopped him, and it wasn't. By the way, it didn't get any better. July 3rd in Pickett's charge, they again had to charge into advancing Confederate troops. There's a place there, if you do the Gettysburg tour, there's a place called the High Water Mark, where it's the one place on Pickett's charge that the Confederates actually breached the line. And guess who happened to be there? 1st Minnesota. So once again, they had to charge in advancing troops. Captain Messick was killed on the second day, on July 3rd, the 3rd day of Gettysburg, the second day of their battle. Captain Farrell mortally wounded. Captain Henry C. Coates had to take command. He was the last remaining officer of the 1st Minnesota. During his charge, Private Marshal Sherman of Company C captured the colors of the 28th Virginia Infantry. He received the Medal of Honor for his exploit. The Confederate flag is still on display in Minnesota at times. I don't know if it still is today, but you ain't getting it back. We earned it. After being knocked out by a bullet in the hand and later shot in the head, bullet in the head and shot in the hand, Corporal Henry O'Brien repeatedly picked up the fallen colors of the 1st Minnesota, carried a wounded combat back to the Union lines. He was also awarded the Medal of Honor for his heroism. Don't fly the Confederate flag in Minnesota. You traitorous bastards. Don't. Nope. 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 There is no excuse for you to fly a Confederate flag, you traitors. You want to fly the Confederate flag? Get your ass out of my state. Because every time you do, you disgrace the history and honor and legacy of the 1st Minnesota. Every single time. But, shut up. Take that damn flag down and show some respect on Memorial Day weekend for the people who sure as hell deserve it. And it ain't the South. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. I'll talk about the other anniversary we're dealing with in Minneapolis, St. Paul when we do return. It is the Matt McNeil Show right here on your Thursday. AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. It's the Matt McNeil Show. By the way, there is a discussion that does happen on whether or not that was the greatest loss of life. They go back to the Revolutionary War, the 1st Infantry Regiment at the 1791 Battle of Wabash. The problem there is, and this is from military historians, I've read about this, that they basically make the argument that that unit actually was technically wiped out. It was 900 people, 896 were killed. So there's only 4 left. And so technically the ruling was the unit was destroyed. They did replenish the unit later on, but it was effectively gone. The Minnesota 1st fought the next day. And then the other thing is, and if you ever one of the things which is amazing is there are praises that came on out. I mean, Hancock himself, the general that sent them in, he basically was in tears. I think it was in the 1920s. It might have been for the 75th anniversary of Gettysburg, or 50th anniversary. It might have been. I'm not sure. But there was a thing that they praised him. Both him and Calvin Coolidge were unrestrained in their praise for the actions of the 1st Minnesota. Hancock, who witnessed the action firsthand, placed the heroism highest in the annals of war. No soldier in any field in this or any other country has ever displayed grander heroism, said Hancock. There is no more gallant deed recorded in history, emphasized in the critical nature of the circumstances of July 2nd at Gettysburg. He basically, they saved the country. Coolidge considered Colonel Colville and those 8 companies of the 1st Minnesota are entitled to the rank of their saviors of their country. Yeah. It makes me tear up a little bit. I got to be honest with you. It makes me tear up a little bit. I'm the bravery of those men to face that, go into that and just do it. And that's what military is. Grant knew that. Sherman knew that. Don't fly the Confederate flag. I'll tell you what. Let me get Steve is in Minneapolis, wanted to chime in on something today. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Matt. Good to hear your voice. And I did not know the history of the Minnesota 1st. So
Wow.
I really appreciate you recounting that and what had happened. That's stunningly amazing.
Yeah, I get very upset anytime I see the Confederate flag in Minnesota because that's anti-Minnesotan if there ever was one.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, but some of these cats just like to do that. Just it'll really get their goat.
Yeah.
It's like no, you're flying the flag of traitors.
Yep.
Simple.
Yep.
Simple. And to that point, the North let the South off a lot too easy, and it has really staged our present day.
Yes, it has.
There's a great book out called.
Yes.
It's a great book out by Heather Cox Richardson called "How the South Won the Civil War," and it's worth having a look see.
Yep.
So anyway, you made a point the other day about maggot hat traitor greed, that she was all about revenge. I think that it's just part of her kabuki theater. Her and her ilk are just all they're going to do is they're trying to be more outrageous than the next person because that's going to get their soundbite on TV. They're just looking for the soundbite on TV so they can just, they can win in their gerrymandered district. I mean, they haven't contributed one whit to anything other than like jump up and down and try to get camera time, and that's it. That's all. They're just there for the camera time.
And Steve, thank you very much. First of all, I really appreciate the phone call. No, I have talked about this modern Republican. I mean, this is how you get Royce White. These people are not concerned about leading or effective government. I mean, they honestly feel as if they can build a government where they get their Social Security, they get their Medicaid, they get their Medicare, just Democrats don't. That they can kick Democrats out of their house and just take over their house. It's my stuff now. That is who these people are. They're petty and small. They're 1,000-time failures, and they basically want to feel as if they've been the winner all along. Trump embellished that, and that was a huge problem. I talk about this with the local Republicans all the time. They don't care about running the state. They only care about their social media accounts, their Twitter accounts, and the trolls validating who they are. That's their most important thing. It's not about any kind of effective leadership. And this is an offset of Republicans after 2010 when all the Democrats didn't vote, damn it. That's why you vote every election, people. But after that, they were able to gerrymander districts where a turnip with an R next to its name would win. And when you create such safe Republican districts, what you end up getting is there's going to be a challenge. But if the Democratic side, the left, is no longer a challenge, it only goes to the extreme. And that's why these districts go further and further and further. Wasn't Minnesota 7? They didn't endorse Fischbach. They didn't endorse Fischbach up there because that district is so safely Republican that they embrace fascism, kind of pseudo-libertarianism, dictators, despots. That's what they want. They want a bully. That's why they love Trump. They want a bully. They want somebody who's going to look at them and said, even though you're a 20-time freaking loser, you're not the loser, you're the winner. And so that ends up happening. You basically get these further and further extremes. And it's not just Marjorie Taylor Greene. We have that here in Minnesota. It's been interesting. There have been, I'm not going to say any names, there have been a few Republican Minnesota House and Senate members since I've been doing the show. I've been doing the show for 14 years now. I know. A quarter of my life. I have done this show for a quarter of my life. Thank you. I appreciate that. There are Republicans, when I came into this station for the first day, were far-right, foaming at the mouth, rabid extremists. And since that day, since their districts have grown more and more suburban and more Democrat, it's amazing to see what has happened to them and to watch them transform themselves from the extremist side to much more moderate. Now, that being said, they still, put their tail between the legs and vote with the extremists. They just hope that you don't know. Or they find one moderate issue and act as if, see, we're really a moderate. It's all a game. But when you look at Republican strongholds, this is only going to get worse. Because for every person that's like Marjorie Taylor Greene or ZZ Flop or Eric Lucero or Drazkowski or Gruenhagen or Walter or anything like that, trust me, there's a guy who's sitting and waiting on their wings that as long as that district keeps getting redder and redder and doesn't get a challenge from the left, that they're waiting there to talk about how they want to start rounding people up. And we're going to have to get those people. And they won't use the term those people. They'll basically tell you right from the straight, we're going to round up this group and this group and this group and put them in concentration camps, and we'll take care of the problem that way. Because that's coming. Unless these Republicans go on out there and start fixing this. They're not going to, who am I kidding? They're not going to fix this. But it will be interesting when you see the people who are now these extremists now, when they start getting lapped by the people on the really far right, and they start losing primaries then. Because at that point, the question is, at that point, if you are any sort of semblance of an old school moderate Republican or a Reagan Republican, then at that point you have to break the party apart because you can't allow that to drag you down. And I'm to a point, I got to be honest with you. I'm kind of surprised that the moderate Republicans still haven't basically pulled a Whig party, left. That the Whig party existed. They basically said you had to be pro-slavery to be part of the Whig party. The anti-slavery Whigs said, the heck with you guys. They left and formed the Republican Party at that point, who now is the Democratic Party after all the Dixiecrats left and became Republican, and all the Republican who were moderate became Democrats back in the 1960s. But you see, you're not going to be able to do that now. It's only a matter of time, I think, before you actually see serious talks by moderate Republicans to break from the party, especially when you start having... we're already there, quoting Hitler and extremism and talking about rounding up certain people and putting babies in cages. Hey, it's not my morality that I'm willing to sacrifice just to see that R next to someone's name get a victory. That's you guys. And until you guys start cleaning up your own damn house, don't look at us and act like we need to help you. Now, you need to find your spines and walk and say, you know what, enough's enough. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. Let's take a break. Come on back. It is the Matt McNeil Show on your Thursday. AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. It's the Matt McNeil Show. I'll tell you what, I'll get to the second Memorial Day thing here coming up in a little bit. I want to get to two stories here before I get done here for the week because, once again, off tomorrow, off on Monday. Have a wonderful Memorial Day. After more than 2 months of warnings, the Rochester City Council, this is an update on a story we've been covering. After more than 2 months of warnings, the Rochester City Council on Monday night ejected council member Molly Dennis from its public meeting. Council President Brooke Carlson told Dennis to leave more than 2 hours into the council meeting during a discussion on collecting unpaid parking tickets. Dennis, usually not the most, polarizing thing. Dennis questioned how the city tracks its tickets it dismisses, steering the conversation close to concerns she had over a statement Mayor Kim Norton made during an investigation into Dennis's claims that she is being discriminated against, part of her ongoing lawsuit against the city. Dennis, her colleagues, and city staff talked over each other at multiple points during the discussion as people in the room appeared to grow increasingly frustrated. Carlson ejected Dennis after she claimed Rochester doesn't track tickets it dismisses, which City Administrator Allison Zelms just said wasn't true. I will leave, but I feel targeted, Dennis said. Okay. All righty. Dennis believes Norton defamed her at the council meeting, censoring her in March of last year. Council members publicly rebuked Dennis for inappropriate behavior and harassment towards her colleagues and city staff. Dennis denies acting unprofessional in her role as an elected official. The city council last summer hired an outside investigator to look into Dennis's claims. The censor was a reprisal of her attention disorder. Norton told the investigators Dennis has tried to fix parking tickets in the past. So that's why the parking ticket thing came on up. Norton's comments were included in the investigator's report and the section where the mayor described how she felt Dennis micromanages and abuses her authority by getting professionally involved in incidents rather than directing residents to staff members. Norton and Dennis had, which, by the way, I worked at the Planning and Zoning Committee in my city. If whenever I had someone come on in, it's like, you need to go talk to this person. I'm not going to, you need to go talk to this person. I mean, if it affected me directly, sure, I might get involved in it as a person where it affected directly. But if it didn't, it's not my job. You can go talk to them. Dennis was ticketed after parking the Olmsted County Governor's Center to go check her mail as part of the council. She claimed it was a crime for any public official to dismiss a ticket, which city staff wasn't true. We have some discretion, says City Clerk Kelly Geisler. I've clearly and very narrowly defined the discretion that my office uses, and we refer everything else to the city attorney or to the courts. So you can fix someone's ticket, Dennis said in response. City Attorney Michael Spindler Craig warned the council Dennis was purposely misinforming the public and recommended Dennis be excused from the proceeding. So the city attorney said, you're not being honest here. Carlson appeared to get frustrated with Dennis shortly after
The warning when Dennis talked over the council president as she was giving directions. You are interrupting me again. Enough, Carlson said. I am not going to tolerate this. Before she was ejected, Dennis said her question came from residents. She asked why the city staff couldn't discuss the process for dismissing tickets on the record during the meeting. Dennis said Tuesday the residents have a right to know why certain tickets are dismissed and by whom. This just seems like personal axes to grind. As an oversight body, the city council needs to help prevent possible cronyism, she said. I believe my question last night was not only reasonable and germane, but essential for public trust. Okay. Do you think, how many people you think really care? I'm serious. It's just, right. Dennis has publicly scrapped with her colleagues in recent months, resulting in warnings over several meetings. In early March, Dennis was almost asked to leave a meeting when she brought up concerns of how she had been cut off while speaking by other council members and the city attorney at prior meeting. Council members argued Dennis isn't being silenced, but rather she abuses her platform to go over issues she has with the city. Federal magistrate judge is reviewing Dennis's lawsuit against the city. Attorneys for the city of Rochester pushed to dismiss Dennis's suit in a court hearing last month, arguing Dennis doesn't seem to have grounds to sue the city. Dennis argues the city and her fellow council members have intentionally ostracized and bullied her because of the process. She processes things differently. Well, if you're going into a meeting and, like I said, if the county attorney, we had the county attorney, or not the city attorney, in meetings with us, and they are there to basically prevent you from saying things you shouldn't. And if the city attorney, the county attorney, whoever it is, comes out and says, we got to stop her from saying this because this is actually intentionally, misinforming the public. Well, the folks of the Rochester City Council, or the Rochester City Council, whatever the case may be there, you guys need to basically, if you cannot allow someone to go in there and spread false information or conspiracy theories and act like it's a fight for justice. No, it's, personal justice and personal axe to grind. That's not why you're there. And by the way, should I mention, when I want to encourage you, get involved with your city, your parks and rec board, if you have a water board, or if you've got a planning and zoning committee or something like that, get involved. The first thing I was told by the mayor when I said I would be interested in doing this, he says, we are not here to basically grind your own axe. We are here to help the public. So make sure that you're not bringing up stuff that is just only important to you, but to the masses. It definitely feels as if that might not have been a speech that was handed out to everybody down there. The other thing I also want to bring up, and this is also in Rochester, because this one is a little concerning, to say the least. Details have been provided in the multi-vehicle crash that resulted in the death of an 18-year-old high school student in Rochester this past weekend. The Rochester Police Department said the three-vehicle crash happened around 5:45 p.m. at Memorial Parkway Southwest and 12th Street Southwest. Olivia Flores, 18, was a passenger inside one of the vehicles and did later die from her injuries at St. Mary's Hospital. A preliminary investigation found the State Patrol squad car was traveling eastbound on 12th Street Southwest when the driver, identified as Trooper Shane Roper, R-O-P-E-R, 32, struck a westbound Ford Focus as it turned south into the Apache Mall parking lot. Flores was one of the two passengers in the Focus, which was pushed into a Toyota RAV4, which was leaving the mall waiting to turn east onto 12th. The Toyota ended up in the ditch. Injured in the crash was a 21-year-old woman who was driving the Focus, a 19-year-old woman who was a passenger in the Focus alongside Flores, a 36-year-old woman who was driving the Toyota, and a 12-year-old girl passenger in the Toyota, all four of whom are from Owatonna. Trooper Roper was also injured, as was a 20-year-old man from Zimbrota, who was a ride-along passenger in the squad car. Okay. So this is a State Patrol car. A 32-year-old trooper is giving a ride-along to a 20-year-old guy from Zimbrota. All right. GoFundMe page has been launch to help support Flores' family. There's a link in the story. I'll make sure I get it out there, please, if you can. The crash remains under investigation by Rochester Police. In a statement, the State Patrol's spokesperson said, making sure motorists are safe as they travel Minnesota roads is the core of what they do every day. Our agency works hard to prevent crashes and save lives.
On Saturday evening, Minnesota State Patrol Squad was involved in a crash in Rochester in which someone later died. Our thoughts are with everyone affected by the tragic event. So it comes down to, well, it seems to, at least from where it looks, someone missed something. Now, either the driver of the Focus that was hit where this young woman was killed, the vehicle she was in was killed, took a left turn illegally, okay, and was hit by the patrol car at a fairly high rate of speed, which might very well be the case. Then again, might be a case where the state patrol officer ran a red light. I mean, he's giving a ride along to a 20-year-old kid from Zimbrota. Is this was this like a recruitment? You're trying to recruit a state patrol officer? You're trying to impress somebody? I don't know what's the deal there. But until we get more information, it seems to me that quite easily the trooper might be the person that caused the crash. It's one of the two. It's either the Ford, the RAV4 that ended up in the ditch. They were just trying to make the right turn. They just got hit. So it's either the person turned left into the mall against the light, which they shouldn't have done, or the patrol car hit somebody that they should not have hit. I don't know. I want to get more on this because obviously until we get that question answered, that's a little bit of a question that needs to be answered, frankly, on who caused this accident. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. We'll take a break, come back, and wrap up the show for the week when we do return. It's the Matt McNeil Show on your Thursday. It's the Matt McNeil Show once again on your Thursday, 952-946-6205. On Saturday, it will be 4 years since George Floyd was murdered by 4 police officers in the streets at 38th and Chicago in South Minneapolis. Forget about Liz's lies. He was killed because, and we've had a trial, we've gotten the evidence, Derek Chauvin drove his knee into his back and basically cut off his circulation. A technique we now know is something that Derek Chauvin did a few times. Multiple times. It was the Chauvin maneuver. Basically getting somebody who was already subdued and basically stepping on them. And in this case, he killed him. There's a lot in the week that happened after that. There was an insane amount of things that happened in this town. It's so hard to wrap your head around all the things that happened. But it was just, the police insisting, starting with the police coming on out saying, well, he has a medical issue. It was a good kill. It was a good kill, Matt. Remember that? The Bob Kroll Police Department. I'll never forget. I'll never forget how when that video came on out and you realized how much the Minneapolis Police Department was just lying through their teeth. The day after, when people started to protest and the cops started violently going after them. The day after that, and the city exploding, basically. Riots and chaos. The Minneapolis Police Department intentionally firing on the news media with glee and aplomb. The realization of how bad the Minneapolis Police Department actually had gotten. Something I, by the way, reposted the Department of Justice investigation into them. The fact they went after Jaleel Stallings, that whole case. The revelation by Bob Kroll himself that he and Gazelka were trying to usurp the governor and take over the city. Can you imagine what would have happened if Commandant Kroll would have taken charge? Holy God. It brings back a lot of memories, sadness, furious anger at the racists that allowed this to happen. The Republican Party that basically told the police they will never stop you, will never do anything, and then it basically imploding as it did. And it was. I mean, that was for years. The Republicans said, hey, Minneapolis police, you come help us campaign in our districts, and we'll make sure that no one ever holds you accountable. The white supremacists that came into town that basically try to and successfully, burn down buildings and stuff like that. No. This all happened because the Minneapolis police's policies at that time were abuse, threats, terrorizing the people of the city. And they still today feel as if they were in the right to do what they did, to basically try to put the people of this city under the heel of their jackboot. I, 4 years later, have faith in O'Hara. I do. I actually do. I don't agree with everything. It's not been perfect. There have been problems. But I think that that's a guy that basically understands that he needs to clean this up. And he's trying to. Most of the bad cops have left screaming about PTSD and taking a big check and getting the heck out of Dodge. Many of them now, we realized, had laundry lists of complaints and penalties against them that never were acted upon. Not only should you remember those we lost in military and combat, but I want you to remember this Memorial Day, all the victims of the Minneapolis Police Department that occurred over the decades that led to what we eventually had after they murdered George Floyd in the street on 38th in Chicago. And let's never go back to that. Once again, best of shows for you tomorrow for on Memorial Day. Have a wonderful and safe Memorial Day weekend. Native Roots Radio is up next. Till Tuesday. See ya.